Welcome to the Whitetail Obsession Podcast with Dave Richmond and co-host Chris Worthing, where we talk and teach everything deer and turkey hunting related. Follow along as we help teach you tips and techniques about hunting, food plots, and habitat management strategies that everyone can use.
Podcast 133. Chris, yesterday
You ghosted me.
I ghosted you. I recorded a podcast without you. I was in the mood and I recorded one. I already uploaded it, but we're continuing with the numbers. So yesterday was 132. Today's 133. And today I feel like it's a meaningful podcast. And what we're going to do is I messaged Chris earlier this morning and I said, let's do 10 things that landowners typically do to ruin their property. So they're implementing things. It may not be working for them, but a lot of times we get into that thing where we continue to do the same things, expecting different results, but then it doesn't happen. So Chris has 5 ideas about this, and I have 5, and we're going to explain each one. So in order, to choose which one of us go first, we're going to play rock, paper, scissors.
I don't even know how to play that.
Rock, paper, scissors. Okay. This is only for the people that's watching. If you're listening, you can laugh as you drive down the road.
It means nothing to me. Don't know how to play.
All right. You just go 1, 2, and then on number 3, you give out
some gang signs.
Yeah, you throw out some gang signs. All right, ready?
Okay. Yeah.
Same time. Ready? 1. You guys go same time.
There.
1. I'm gonna kill you. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I cut your paper, so I go first.
Do it.
Actually, no, you lose, so you got to go first.
Oh,
that's what we're doing. You lost, you got to go first.
My list I kept real simple from a hunting standpoint of someone that owns a piece of property or leases.
Mm-hmm.
One of the very just simply overhunting a piece of property can ruin your chances at something. Checking trail cameras constantly, being on that property when you don't need to be on that property.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know people have to do things when they can do them. They might live far away from a piece of property or something. They want to go in and do some TSI, or they're going to, like me, I love to cut my clover, mow clover. And I mean, just if you don't need to be there, don't go, So that I don't have mine in any particular order either. I just wrote down some ideas.
Yeah, mine's not in order either. I just wrote down different things. And
so
then
you gonna do one now, or you want me to go through all 5? Or
what I want to do is, since you went first, you named your thing. I just want to comment on your idea.
Oh,
and then I'll go and you can comment on my idea.
All right.
So we'll just keep going back and forth.
All right.
And I agree with you 100%. And the only thing I wanted to add was the smaller the property, the worse it is. The bigger the property,
true. Yeah.
The more you can get away with things.
That's true.
So the smaller that piece, the more like strategic you have to be. The larger the piece, you can get away with more things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I wanted to say. All right. My first one on the list, no particular order, is too many attractions. I never really had this problem, but just since I've been consulting, I see this a lot where, I'll go to a property and there's 50 rope scrapes around a food plot, or there's 50 vine scrapes, or there's 7 box blinds in the middle of a food plot, or 50 water holes, or whatever it is. It's too much happening. And a major thing with this too is feeders. I went to a couple properties last year where it was like this. You pull into this opening, right? And it'd be like this just say 50-yard by 50-yard opening, you'd have this giant wooden ladder stand right on the edge. You'll have two giant, like 500-pound feeders. You'll have like seven rope scrapes, bags of corn, and pellets, and uh, what do you call them?
Blocks,
Blocks,
feeding blocks. Yeah.
feeding blocks. All that. It's just too much happening. And if if you're a buck, when you walk into that, think about what that buck is seeing. Like it's over the top. So you don't need to do that. And that's one of the biggest things that or biggest mistake that people can make.
Well, my comment to that would be some of the struggle that the like Ohio hunters are having right now. You know, they've they're in the late season. The deer have done their thing most of the year,
Hmm.
and now they're out dumping corn.
Hmm.
You know, yes, you might get some attraction there. You might get some on camera or whatever, but it's just not natural. It's not natural for a buck to walk into the situation you just explained. You know, that has to have an uncomfortable feeling for them. Not only that, but to complement my last thing that I mentioned with the over being there too much is you could be dispersing all that extra scent to that area and they would maybe avoid it totally.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
would be the only thing I would added to that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so in no particular order, we want to go into and we talk about this a lot, and this was a no-brainer. I shouldn't even put this down. We could have skipped over it, but I mean, there might be someone here that needs to hear it. But having bad access to your property,
Hmm.
you know, there's certain stands that you can only hunt mornings, only hunt in the evening, or it's just terrible, no matter what. You know, uh, like you said, like having a box blind in the middle of a plot. That's horrible. You got to walk through the plot to get to it,
Hmm.
or after you gets dark, you have to get down out of that and possibly blow every deer out of the field to go home.
Yep.
So access is key in a lot of places too. Like I said, I didn't feel that I needed to say that one, but yet somebody needed to hear that probably.
Yeah. And I would say, just add to it is what you said with the the food plots, or the box blinds being in the middle of the plots. It's horrible. And a lot of times when I go to see properties, that's like the first thing that I notice, right? And then you try to explain that to them, and most of the time I'd say it's 50-50. 50% of the time they get it and they're like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." The other 50% of the time they're like, "Well, I watch TV shows and that's how theirs is set up all the time."
I feel
And
I would feel very vulnerable
yeah, and my response to that is, "Well, this is not a TV show.
because
It's complete. This
deer
is real life here."
key in on movement
Mhm.
and their eyes are going to be fixed on that plot as they approach it.
Mhm.
And I mean, I've gotten busted before hanging out of a tree when they're on their way into a plot, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not foolproof, but
Yeah.
being out in the middle where they're looking already,
Yep.
I
Imagine you
mean,
got
they're,
a 100-yard wide, 100-yard long food plot, and you got this giant tower standing in the middle.
yeah.
You got 20 deer out there feeding, and it's dark, and you have to climb out of that thing, walk 50 yards to the edge of the woods, and then you work your way out. You just blew everything out of that field.
I mean, for instance, I have the shanty down there on the lower property, and obviously it's a permanent fixture. Some of the deer are so used to it, they don't even glance at it, you know? But there is a select few deer that will take a look. They know to look, you know. Maybe they were a part of the family that I shot their mama out of last year or something, who knows, you know. But if they've seen somebody move up there before, or maybe I shot a deer out of it and they might have been the fawn that year, next year when they came back, they would know to, maybe steer clear from that. But yeah, visually though, I mean, I would be very vulnerable feeling in the middle of that plot.
Mhm. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
My number two, no order, is people are making these improvements and attractions and stuff, but there's no flow through the property. The
Okay.
food plots are in the wrong spot. The stands are in the wrong spot. If your property is adequate for bedding, nothing is flowing through your property. Everything's in the wrong spot. And I see this all the time and when I say that, meaning it messes your access up too, or you mess it up by your access because you're putting bedding along people trails or ATV trails or around the border of your property. It backs up to neighbors, and the neighbors come in and they push the deer out, and then you don't have bedding separated from food, so to catch deer in between that. So there's no flow through the property. Everything's in the wrong spot, and I see this very, very often.
Yeah, I I can imagine that would be an issue. If you're setting up, if you think, like we on that old property you had, we would there was down trees and things, and we would cut slots in the down logs for the deer to walk through,
Hmm.
because it was blocking like an intersection of an entrance to a plot or something, and we proved that you could do that. You could steer them.
Hmm.
But if you're not creating flow and the deer are willy-nilly going all over the place, how do you know where to even hunt? Where are
Hmm.
you going to where are you going to set up at or whatever? Where are you going to hang a stand? So you definitely have to pay attention to flow. If you're not creating flow, you need to recognize where the flow is so
Hmm.
that you can set up on them for that ambush.
Yeah, too, and I just want to add to it also is, you know, if you're not creating the flow, for instance, a lot of times you might get just say you get a select cut, or maybe even like just a heavy select cut. It's where you've opened the canopy up, 70%. Now, if you do that on your entire property, that entire property is now the same. So there's no flow. So now you got to come back in and make flow. You know, steer deer certain ways by cutting different trees or adding different things. So there's a lot to it, but the property has to have flow.
Yeah, you would create a monoculture of mess
Hmm.
if somebody dropped trees like that,
Yeah.
and the deer would just, however they felt that day, just go whatever direction, you
Hmm.
know. But
Yep.
if you create a least resistance type atmosphere where you can cut slots and steer them, you're going to be much happier hunter
Hmm.
for sure.
Yep.
For sure. Okay, so along those lines, you were talking about cutting and things, and I
Hmm.
I just wrote down like browse removal.
Hmm.
A lot of guys. I'm not gonna mention names, but you remember one of the first clients you and I went to. You booked this dude. I won't even say what town, but you booked him anyhow. But he had a hillside, and it was oh man, it was all kind of berries and
Yeah.
thorns and all kind of great undergrowth.
Hmm.
And he was telling us, oh, well, just like you were saying on your yesterday's podcast, how people have this pre notion what they want to do, be open minded. And when we got there, he was saying how he wanted to brush hog that hillside and open that all up. And I just looked at him. I said, "What are you flipping nuts?" And he's like, "What I say?" And I'm like, "Bro, people would kill to have all that stuff you have on that hillside
Hmm.
for their browse, because it was all full of blackberries and wild cherries and all that brambles and thorns and stuff. And the
Yeah.
deer love that stuff. And we, I think, I don't know if you said it or I said it, but one of us told him, cut a path through it.
Hmm.
If you want to brush hog something, brush hog a path down through that towards your stand and create that flow that we were just talking about and steer them to your stand."
Hmm.
And he was like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I
So
remember that.
yeah. Or people just get a little crazy on their food plots and don't pay attention what they're spraying. And all along the edge of their plot is a soft edge that's all kind of nice browse and things too,
Hmm.
and they accidentally spray that all gone, and kill it off. Or you just have people that love to pick up sticks and things, for firewood. You know, but they're riding through the woods and they're collecting firewood or whatever. Well, there's a brush pile there, so they, not a brush pile of wood, but like brush of these brambles I'm talking about, and they're like, "Oh, get this out of the way," and they cut it down. This is in my
Hmm.
way. Well, if they looked at it close, it was probably all nipped off from all winter from the deer feeding on it or whatnot.
Hmm.
Just removal of browse in general.
Yeah, definitely. I saw one guy last year that you're speaking of that. I went there last year and he was telling me he had this food plot and there was probably a little bit of a, I'd say maybe like a 20-yard wide of a soft edge from where the food plot was. You had a soft 20-yard area of just, weeds and grasses and stuff, and then the woods. He was telling me that he was spraying all that in there and it was all for like goldenrod and ragweed and all this stuff. And he would spray it every year with glyphosate and 2,4-D to kill it. I'm like, dude, no, don't do that because he, you have ragweed super high in protein. You have the goldenrod, which they won't eat really during the summer, but when that stuff turns, blossoms out in the fall and they get a frost, they eat it. It's high in protein. So like leave that little edge there, let it regrow. Mow it maybe, in the spring to get, fresh tips and stuff on it, but let that stuff grow, let that ragweed grow. You already got a food plot. So why
Yeah.
do you need, stop killing all the natural browse?
Yep. Yep. And a lot of the other animals,
Yeah.
profit from it as well. I mean, just
Hmm.
not the deer you're after. If it's low hanging fruit, I mean, you got birds and turkeys and
Hmm.
things.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just not a good idea
Hmm.
unless it's something stupid invasive. But even some of that they'll eat.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. My number 3 on the list is uh, food plots are in the wrong location.
Mm.
So a lot of times I'll see the food plot. It's either on the edge, the edge of the property, or it's in the middle of the property. And what people don't realize is that food plots offset bedding. It's because deer want to bed, semi close to food. So
Close.
if
Yeah.
you put the food in the middle of your property, just for I'm just giving an example. Let's say your property is 100 yards wide and 100 yards long. If you put that food plot in the middle, okay, you now have 50 yards this way and 50 yards this way. If you put that food in there, you just push the deer off of your property onto the neighbor's property. It's not because it offsets the bedding. So a lot of times this goes back to my number 2, which is the flow. Put food on one end or the other, allow the deer to flow through your property back to bedding and then from out of the bedding back to the food. And then you have that in between area of flow to where you can set up tree stands and hunt that intersection. You can hunt that way you have flow through the property. I see a lot of just too many times where it's in the middle of the property or it's in an area, let's say they have to, walk through the property to get to the food or they have to walk through bedding areas to get to it. You just blew your whole woods out.
Yeah.
Or, the food your property is so small and your food plot's so big, you're not left with room to maneuver around your property, and you just end up spooking the deer out of there anyway.
Yeah.
So there's a size to that, and then there's also a location to that as well.
Right. Right. The only way you profit from something like that is if your neighbors have a big piece of land and they don't bother the deer and they can go in there and bed down,
Hmm.
which is one of my cases here. Because
Hmm.
the destination plots that I have, there's no woods attached to it that's ours. It's all neighbors, and luckily, there's no houses on those pieces, and the deer do move freely from those bedding areas to my plots, so I
Mhm.
can set up in between. So that's the only way you're going to profit from that.
Yep.
The only instance I can see where that would work,
Yeah, and
because
the
it
whole
works. It
I
works. It works for me.
Mhm.
Not 100% of the time, but that's how I have to hunt that over there.
Yeah, the whole idea with it is, if you're creating all these attractions and food plots and stuff is to, try to keep the deer on your property during the daylight hours, because
Yeah,
if you do push them off to the neighbors, which a lot of times,
it
it
happens.
depends. It's situations where it happens. No deer is going to stay on your property 24/7, but the idea is to try to keep them on your property for longer periods of time. That way they're not susceptible to, other hunters. Other
Yeah.
hunters, they're not in on the other property during daylight getting shot.
Yep. Yep.
So that's why you got to have that flow. Like at the old farm, a lot of it worked because the food plot kind of was in the middle of the property, but that's where it had to go because the first half of the property was nothing but a hill, but we had enough flow because it pushed the deer back into that pine to the backside of the property where they bedded, and we never went back there.
Yeah.
So when we hunted the field, we sucked the deer out of the back of the woods and then also out of the apple tree area because it was all thick. And then a lot of times, that neighbor's property over there by the Lucky Stand, it dropped off and nobody hunted that piece. So we would get deer coming out of there as well.
Yeah.
So sometimes it can work, but in a perfect world, that's what you would want.
Yeah, and then it segues into my next one. Um, it's not super deep, but
Mhm,
over harvesting
mm,
animals.
mhm,
We don't on that property. We didn't kill a crap ton of deer, but in every video we made, there was at least 15 to 20 deer in front of us.
mhm,
I mean, and we had tags. We could have sat there and just slayed them. You know, we could have slayed a bunch of deer, but we didn't choose to do that. We were real picky with the animals we wanted to shoot. So it goes along with my number one with over hunting. But even if you're over hunting, that doesn't mean you're actually harvesting either. But if you're over harvesting, you could throw things out of whack with ratio, no
mhm.
doubt. But if you've got all your buddies coming over and you're over hunting it to begin with, and they're all harvesting too, goes back to, like I said, number one. You're going to be on the property longer than you should, probably. You know, spreading that scent around, training them deer to look for you. They know you're there, probably. And yeah, just don't hunt, have more than one spot to hunt, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Mhm.
You know, don't try your public lands or whatever. Go out, do some scouting, get off the same piece of property, and get out. Go deeper than 50 yards. Don't sit near the road. So
Yeah, I would just say to that too is that I always tell people, don't hunt because you want to, hunt because it makes sense. Um, you got a good day where the wind is right or the temperatures are dropping or whatever it is. You just, don't kind of, and like I said, this goes back, I think, to the first thing you said is, that smaller their property, the more strategic you have to be. The bigger the property, you can get away
yeah,
with more mistakes. So, you know, on those small properties, you got to be precise. Hunt when it makes sense. You get
yep,
temperature drops or storms coming and going or good
yep,
winds. You just have to be more precise with it.
yep,
All right. My number 4 is your property has no daytime or no browse, no natural browse.
yeah,
And the browse is going to help keep the deer during the daylight because wherever they're bedding at, there's probably browse somewhere that they can nibble on, browse on throughout the day. And the mistake that this leads to is landowners not wanting to cut the timber. And it's the biggest hurdle that people have to overcome. And I had just an example. I had a guy call me last year. He was in Kentucky. He had like 400 or 500 acres. And I asked him, I said, when was your property timbered? And he said, oh, that was about 30 years ago.
Mm.
And I said, this time of year, can you see straight through he's like, dude, we can see 400 yards through our property.
Oh,
I
wow.
said, okay, well, if I'm coming out there, like, it's going to be recommended that you get a timber cut. And he's like, oh, no, 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 no. He's like, we can't cut the timber. He's like, my father likes the trees and, all this other stuff. And I was like, well, look, I can't really help you
Right.
because we can do all this stuff and all this work and it's
Right.
going to help. But and this guy wanted, monster bucks and all the, holding deer and all this stuff. And I was like, you have to cut the timber. And he didn't like that answer. And I didn't work with that client because I'm not, coming all the way out to Kentucky for,
Yeah.
a 3, 4, 5 day project and you fight me tooth and nail on when I'm trying to help you. But
Right.
that I hear this all the time is I don't want to cut the timber. I like the trees. My wife likes the trees or,
Yeah.
this, that, and the other. Well, and like I mentioned on the podcast I did yesterday by myself because you were sleeping, is that if you don't cut the timber to improve the browse value on your property, your property is never going to be at the top. You're going to be stuck down in a D or a C level property when if you just focused on that daytime browse, and the regeneration and sunlight and all this stuff, you can bring it up to a B or an A, but you'll never be at the top without browse.
That's self-explanatory.
Mhm.
So number 5,
He said that's self-explanatory.
yeah, I don't need to beat the dead horse there. The except for I wasn't sleeping. I was having an adult Christmas party for my children.
I know.
Anyhow,
You felt the need to explain that.
yeah, because you're always bad mouthing me.
Hmm.
So the number 5 part of your rebuttal to my number 4 was just hunting because they feel like it.
Hmm.
And my comment was hunting wrong conditions was
Hmm.
number 5.
Hmm.
And a great example of that was this year. And those of you don't know, I've been taking my boy out finally after a long bout of his Crohn's disease. He's feeling better. Took him out. Wanted to key in, get him a nice buck. So the first week of archery here in PA looked weather-wise was nice, but it was still warm. And I told him he was chomping at the bit. He wanted to get over there because I had all these nice pictures of bucks, and he wanted to limit out early in the season is what his goal was. But my goal was like got to go in the right conditions and get that right buck. So I held him off till the second week of archery, and we had a drop in temperature. It was like 20-degree from one day to the next, and we went in our first night, and he killed a nice buck. So you have to have the right conditions,
Hmm.
and I'm talking weather at this point. But I mean, there's other conditions too. I mean, it could be wind, you
Hmm.
know, it could be a lot of things.
Yep.
But
Wind, rain, snow, whatever.
yeah, I mean, we just I held him off, and he trusted me for it, and it paid off. So now, like he thinks Dad's a cool dude, and he should look at me. You know,
No comment.
no comment. That one's self-explanatory.
Self-explanatory.
Ah, what's your number 5?
Number 5. It was that your number 5?
Yeah.
Okay. So is my number 5 is implementing the wrong attraction.
Mm.
So and what I mean by that is, for instance, food plots. You're planting the wrong thing. And that matters. Depending on your goals. When your season starts, is it more tailored toward September-ish, early September? Or is it tailored in that October range? Or, when are you primarily looking to hunt? Do you need a year-round food source? Do you need early season attraction? Do you need that November, December, January attraction? All that matters. And if you're implementing planting the wrong thing, you're going to limit yourself on success. Another part of that is we see people hinge cutting. You know, there's guys out there that hinge cut every freaking property, and that's most of the time that's the wrong thing to do. Like, I'm not like a huge fan of hinge cutting, but I do think that it can be implemented sometimes, very little. I like it to where you can make trails with it and steer deer certain ways. I don't necessarily like it for bedding areas, but it can work. But it's just the overuse and um, overuse, or just flat out just the wrong attraction for your property. There's a lot of that, you know. Um, it can go into other things as well, but that's the main thing.
Yeah, I just gotta admit, I'm not a big advocate of the hinge cutting thing at all. Really,
Mhm.
I
I
think I think it looks sloppy for one thing. Um, and if I was to do it, if I was to do it, I would do it more for the wintering feed.
mhm,
I would knock a non-desirable tree down that has buds on it or whatever, and let them eat away. Because I've got a foot of snow here right now, and they would probably, if they heard a chainsaw, they'd probably come running.
mhm.
And I think, and I do like the idea of steering. I That would be the other instance, I guess, but I'm just not a fan of that.
Well,
It could be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing, you
it
know.
is dangerous. And like I said, I like it for certain things. Very small percentages of properties I like it on. But it's a huge
It has its
maintenance.
place,
Yeah, it's a huge maintenance thing too.
but people like, and you probably know who I'm talking about, but there's a few YouTubers that they every video or every other video contains something about hinge cutting,
Mhm,
and I don't know. If you need to cut trees, that's different. That's one way you could do it, I guess. Like you were saying about creating the browse, or creating food or whatever. If you could incorporate that into that cutting, you know, but I'm not a huge fan of it. Just
mhm.
not.
Yeah,
It has its place. It definitely does. But when you know, I don't know. Like I said, there's guys out there that's their name to fame. I can think of two right off the top of my head. Uh, that their videos are nothing but them in chaps and with a chainsaw and the helmet. And I mean, that's that's their video every time. They're creating feathered edges or soft edges or hard hard turns or whatever you want to call it. They're
mhm.
creating bedding with it, but at least the one talks more about coming back and maintaining that after you've felled that tree and it grows and it starts sprouting. If you did
No,
it properly, if
it's
you
a
do it
huge
properly, it's going to have sprouts.
it's a
you know
huge maintenance thing.
yeah,
Um,
and if you're not prepared for maintenance, I don't advocate you trying it
yeah,
if you're not going to go back and maintain it. So that's my 2 cents.
there was a guy that I went to like 2 years ago, and it was just a perfect situation to do it. But I had him basically edge feather this field, and we hinge cut the trees. The field's this way, and we hinge cut the trees into the field,
Right.
and
So the
and we
tops were out into the
the
field.
tops were out in the field, and we
Yeah.
staggered it. So like we left space in between, and we did this probably 50 yards long. He's like, I don't understand the purpose of this. I said, think about it. I said, we're going to drop the treetops into the field. Now the deer can go in and out between the tops, right? Not only is it browse, but think about the birds and stuff are going to land in these trees. They're going to poop the seeds out, and you're going to have all kinds of stuff growing up through these trees, and you're going to have all kinds of browse. He's like, that makes sense. I said, in a year or two, I want you to send me a picture of this. And it was funny because we did it like in the wintertime. It went that year. The following year, he sent me a picture, and he actually called me. He's like, dude, this is insane. He's like, all this stuff growing, all kinds of stuff just growing up through blackberry bush, all this stuff. And he's like, the deer hammer it throughout all year long.
Yeah.
And so it has its place.
Sure.
It's not for everything. It's not
No,
for everywhere.
it's not an
So
answer.
yeah, it's not an answer. So that's our 10 things. And I think that was very informative. If you guys have any questions, let us know. And you have anything to finish up with?
Nope, I'm good. We'll see you on 134.
134. Later.
See you.